This video is for anyone who's lost a substantial amount of weight, 5, 10, 15, 20 kilos or even more, and you want to make sure you keep it off for good. Just like my client Nathan, who dropped over 30 kilos and he's kept that off now for over a year. Here's exactly how we've gone about that. First off, congratulations. If you're watching this, you've probably lost a good chunk of weight, which required a valiant effort. It is no easy feat to be in a calorie deficit for an extended period of time, especially with all of the calorific food options we have available to us in the modern day. First off, I'm going to scare you a little bit because I do want you to watch this entire video. You've put in a substantial amount of effort to achieve the result that you have. It is imperative that you do not lose this result. Studies show that up to 35% of the weight lost during a diet will be regained within 1 year. That's pretty grim reading, right? How can we make sure we're not part of that statistic? Within 5 years, practically all of the weight lost will be regained regardless of the diet used. This is what the research shows in the world of obesity, the obesity research. Now, this is not physique research. This is not physique coaching like what I do, like the reason you're probably watching this video. It is pretty scary reading though. So know that you're in a difficult place. You're in a challenging place where the decisions you make over the next few weeks and months will determine whether you maintain this weight loss and go on to build some muscle on top and have an incredible physique and an even more incredible transformation, or you take a couple of steps backward, which is not what we want whatsoever. Here's something I say to my clients: just because the deficit is over does not mean the diet is over. So first off, I'm just going to tell you a bit of a story I've had. I did a prep. So what that means is you lose weight, specifically body fat, and you get really, really lean, usually to compete on a bodybuilding stage. This was during the time of COVID, and so there were no shows. They all got cancelled. But I was already most of the way there, so I wanted to finish it, see it through, and ended up taking some photos, did a photo shoot. It was cool. Good experience to go through, and I have since competed in bodybuilding. The first time I ever got incredibly lean like this, I rebounded terribly and I gained 7 kilos in a week. Felt awful. None of that was muscle. It all felt like my face was like a water buffalo. My stomach was constantly in pain because it was just trying to process the ridiculous amount of food I was putting down. So I have been there. All of the habits which you have used during the diet need to stay after the diet, and it feels a bit silly saying that or even thinking it, but it is worth saying. You don't get to just switch off. The only thing that changes is you are no longer in a calorie deficit, or as much of a calorie deficit, depending on which diet approach you take. So you've got 4 options: a reverse diet, a recovery diet, you can come up to maintenance, or you can do a YOLO diet. I'll talk you through each one of them. The reverse diet looks like you increase your calories from where you are now up by 200 to 300. Now, this is probably still a calorie deficit for you, but this is for if you really, really, really want to maintain your weight loss. We're taking a slow and steady approach. If you've dropped more than 10 kilos, this is the approach you should be taking, slow and steady, because your body is unfortunately primed to regain body fat at this stage. So we need to really take it meaningfully and slowly. The next option is a recovery diet. That's where you would increase your calories by about 1,000 per day, which sounds crazy. Why would anyone do that? Well, if you've gotten stage lean, right, so lean that you are unhealthy, then actually gaining some body fat is a good thing for your health, right? So this is very few circumstances. This is natural bodybuilders. And only natural bodybuilders. No one else would need to do a recovery diet. If you've just dropped between 5 and 10 kilos, you can just come all the way back up to maintenance. Now be careful, because your new maintenance is not what your maintenance was before you've started the diet, because during your diet you probably had to bring your calories lower and lower and lower, or do more and more cardio, or eat less and less food, or whatever it was that you decided to do to create the calorie deficit. But if you have only dropped a little bit of weight between 5 and 10 kilos, your body is not as primed to be regaining body fat at this stage, and you can come back up to maintenance. Also, you probably had a leaner starting point, which means you're now pretty damn lean, and so coming up to maintenance is going to be a great decision for you because you've got the opportunity to build some muscle from this point onwards. And of course, your fourth option is the YOLO diet. I would not recommend this diet whatsoever. The reverse diet is going to be the approach for you if you're watching this video, right? Because you've lost a good amount of weight, more than 10 kilos, and it's more important for you to maintain your weight loss than it is to really consider optimizing muscle growth at this point in time, because what we're going to do is increase calories by 200 to 300. We're going to do it entirely from carbohydrates. 200 to 300 calories may not be at your maintenance, which means you're probably still in a calorie deficit and not necessarily growing muscle straight from the get-go. That's okay, because your biggest priority is to slowly reverse your calories, get to a place where you are more metabolically healthy, your maintenance is higher, without gaining back too much body fat. And we're going to do that by making sure the first calorie increase comes entirely from carbohydrates, and this is for 3 reasons. I feel like I talk about this in almost every video now. So I wanted to walk you through a paper called The Nutritional Strategies of High-Level Natural Bodybuilders During a Competition Prep, and what they found was the nutrient intake of bodybuilders reflected high protein, high carb, low fat. Why do bodybuilders go high carb, low fat? Those are the two main things. We know why they go high protein. You probably are already eating a high protein diet, right? But why is it important to go high carb, low fat? They also found that, where are we? The competitors who placed had a greater carbohydrate intake at the start of their contest prep. So it's like, okay, if the bodybuilders are doing this, the people who routinely lose so much weight and get as lean as humanly physically possible, if they're doing this, well, maybe they're onto something, right? A couple of reasons. The first is because if I ask you, right, I'm going to have you at your maintenance, and then I'm going to put you in a calorie surplus above it. On one day, I'm going to put you in a calorie surplus just from carbs, and then on the other day, I'm going to do it just from fats. Which day are you going to gain more body fat? The carbs or the fats? Because you're going to gain body fat. You're in a calorie surplus, right? Most people would think the carbs. It's not the case. There was a study where they tested this, and they essentially found that carbohydrate overfeeding produced an excess of 75 to 85% of the excess energy being stored as body fat. Whereas from fats, it was 90 to 95% of the excess energy being stored as body fat. So it's easier for the human body to convert fats into body fat than it is carbs into body fat. Seems simple when I say that, doesn't it? Right? Like if you want to limit your body fat gain, limit your fat gain, limit your fat intake, essentially, right? The second reason is the satiety index. So after a diet can be a very, very difficult time frame. Even though you've got some extra calories to play with, you don't have psychologically the goal that you're working towards, whether it's for a photo shoot or a holiday vacation or a competition or even a goal weight, for example. You don't have that psychological goal in your mind anymore, and so you don't have one of the drivers which is helping you along, essentially. You're going to be hungry. You're going to be very, very hungry, and it's going to take a while for your hormones, as in your hunger and satiety hormones, to regulate. So you really need to be making high satiety food choices. Now, when we look at high satiety food choices, we know protein is satiating, right? You already know that you need to be eating enough protein. That's not what this video is about. What's very interesting, though, is that on a calorie per calorie basis, carbs tend to be a little bit more filling than fats when we pick the right carbs. So the food that scored the highest, the food that was the most filling on a calorie per calorie basis in the whole study was potatoes. And then fish was next. Okay, that makes sense. That's a protein. And then oats or porridge. And then fruit after that. So that's why I'm telling you to create a calorie increase by 200 to 300 calories to start your reverse diet, and do that all through carbohydrates, because that's what's going to fill you up the most. That's what's going to fuel your training sessions. It's also going to lead to less of the excess being stored as body fat than if you did a mix of carbs and fats or just fats, for example. These are the macros I recommend. Protein, 3 grams per kilogram of your lean body mass
If you don't know what that is, ask ChatGPT. Fats should be 0.6 gram per kg of your body weight, and then all the rest of your calories comes from carbohydrates. You have to control your weekends. This is where you're going to go off. This is where you're going to go off. And it is so easy, 2, 3, 4 weekends in a row, and you're almost back at square one essentially. Do not let your weekends ruin not just the work that you're doing through the week to stay locked in, but also the work that you've done throughout this entire diet to lose the weight in the first place. I do want you to see that there is another way. So obviously I've had a pretty negative approach when it comes to post-diet binge eating in periods of my life, or one period in particular I learned after that. I do want to show you though that there is another way. Right? If you do this properly, then you can go through a period where you're in a calorie surplus. Yes, you're gaining a lot of size back. Yes, but a lot of it is muscle. And you don't have to worry about gaining too much body fat. Your muscles are going to fill up, your training performance is going to be great. And like everyone's got a different perspective. When I look at these two physiques, I like this physique more than this physique personally. Maybe that's because I grew up as a skinny kid and always wanting to be bigger, but I like this physique personally better. And this is because I nailed my reverse diet after the diet before this. Cool. If you need help with this, hit the first link in the description and I'll see you tomorrow.